Hello, 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 my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Sarah and my channel is all about personal development and health and wellness. And I'm here to give you lots of tips about how you can make life better for you. I've spent years and years on this journey myself, done so much study, courses. Along the way, I found many modalities that have helped me exponentially. And so some of them I trained in. And so I want to share what I've learned along the way, because I just feel like that's what life's about, is sharing our knowledge with one another, collaborating with one another, helping each other, lifting each other up. That's what really life's all about. Well, it is for me. And I've made it my full-time job now. So welcome to my channel, and today I want to talk to you about your inner child. And some of you will know about your inner child, some of you may never have heard the term before, so I'll just start from the beginning. And really, our inner child is one little aspect of ourselves, but sometimes that little inner child can be having a lot to say in our lives. So I looked it up on YouTube, on Google, Wikipedia, and to see what they said about inner child. And the definition was a person's supposed original or true self, especially when regarded or concealed in adulthood. And another one was an individual's childlike aspect. It includes what a person learned as a child, often conceived as a semi-independent subpersonality subordinate to the waking conscious mind. Well, there's quite a lot in there. But that's it. Really, when we're little children, as I have talked about in some of my other videos, we kind of take on the experiences of the world, and we form opinions about ourselves and the world around us. And most of us really didn't escape our childhood without some form of trauma happening. And it could have been, it can be severe. It can be abuse, emotional, physical abuse, neglect. It can be things like, you wet your pants in class when you're 5 years old and people laughed at you. That's a trauma. It can be that you fell when you were a baby, and like nobody caught you, and you wonder why you've got. For years, I wondered why. I thought I had a fear of heights. Actually, I didn't mind going high, but then I would get up there and I'd actually have a panic attack. And then one day when I was going to an energy healer, she said, you were dropped when you were quite young, and she said, you're not scared of heights. You're actually got a fear of falling. I was like, well, that makes sense. So we, through our childhood, because our brains are so observant and absorbent, we've got very, our brain matter is very, very soft and malleable. And so we take on a lot when we're children. And that little inner child, if we have come across trauma, which most of us, as I said, have experienced some form of trauma, that's how we start to view ourselves, that, we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're unlovable, all those things that really affect us and can really undermine our confidence. So when we grow up into adults, those limiting beliefs can really be inhibiting how we are progressing in our lives. We can be accepting things that really we shouldn't be accepting. Our boundaries can be really poor. We can just be putting up with a load of garbage, really, and that we shouldn't be. But because we don't feel worthy, and that little inner child has made all these belief systems about the world that we're in, we kind of can just be attracted to what we already knew as children as well. If we were brought up by abusive, neglective parents, unfortunately, statistically, you're likely to attract someone that's very, very similar to one of your parents when you're an adult. So by going back and addressing our inner child and really acknowledging that little child in us, we can shift some of the patterns in our lives hugely. Sometimes we can be really triggered by things that happen in our lives as well, and respond and react to them really, really strongly. And it's actually not about the situation that we find ourselves in right at that moment. It actually can be very deep seated in a belief system that we've got because of trauma when we were little children. So for instance, you know, your partner or your husband, you've asked him to do jobs around the house or whatever it is, and he doesn't do it. And of course that's really frustrating, but we can make it, I used to do this, we can make it such a big deal, because I realised that I had a program running in my head that they didn't do what I was asking of them, that they didn't care about me, and that I wasn't worthy, and that I was not lovable. How crazy is that? You know, like, just because somebody doesn't do what you ask them to do around the house, you make it that you're unlovable. But that was that little girl in me who had grown up not always having her needs taken care of. So crying, you know, you want your parents to come to you and you cry. That's the only way we have to speak when we're babies. If nobody comes, then we can feel like we are not lovable. We're calling out, we're crying out. Even when we have words and we're young, you know, we might be calling out to our parents, calling out to our mother, and she's on the phone. And she's caught up in whatever's going on for her. It was her stuff. It was your parents' stuff. And I think when you grow up and you become an adult, you realise that actually you've got your own stuff, and then your children need things from you, and you're not always going to meet 100% all their needs all the time. That's just life. And unfortunately, we probably have less knowledge about this stuff. I know I did, bringing up my own children. You know, everybody is doing the best that they can with the knowledge they have at the time. And I'll repeat this throughout my videos constantly, because we don't want to be blaming our parents. Some of them, you know, like, yeah, they've got to take responsibility for their lacks or their things that went wrong, and you know, it might be a real journey to forgive them, but you've got to realize that actually what happened when you were a child was, and where your parents let you down, it was where they were at, and it was their stuff. It was their shit. It was nothing to do with you. And once you can really get that, it becomes quite easy to forgive your parents. Well, it, you know, like it did for me. I mean, I walked around for years and years absolutely having huge issues about my parents, and particularly my mother. And then, you know, like when you start to realise where they come from, what was their upbringing like, what happened to them, because we're all products of what happened to us, really. And we're not good or bad people. Generally, we're all good people. It's just shit happens to us. And we have to process that. And we, as little children, it's very difficult to process that. So when we are adults, we can hopefully look back and have a little bit of compassion for our parents, and then have some compassion for that little part of us that was a little child that is quite often getting triggered. You know, when things are really pushing your buttons, when I say triggered, that means emotion arises and you feel really, quite often you flip to anger, but sometimes you can just, like, I don't know, it's a surge of adrenaline comes up and you can shut down, withdraw. Some people lash out, get angry, storm off. Sometimes it can be a huge wave of sadness washes over you. And if those things are happening to you and they're happening to you regularly, realize that they're trying to tell you something. And usually it is something deeply embedded in your childhood, and there's a wound there that needs healing. So if you can take the time to, first of all, notice that there's, oh God, I'm having that feeling, and not react to it. Just take a breath. Maybe take yourself away if you can. But the longer you can have between the feeling and the reaction, the more in control and the more power you're taking back. So really being able to, just calm your nervous system down, whatever that means. Go for a walk if you can. It pays sometimes not to address the problem then. You need to kind of remove yourself. If you're with someone, you can say, hey, I'm feeling quite emotional now, or, something's come up for me. I need to just go off for a few minutes. I will come back to you, and then you can talk about it. Hopefully you can talk about it, because that's where things can go wrong too. If it's happening with your partner or somebody that's close in your life, or even a work colleague, if you don't come back to them and just say, sorry, I needed to, you don't even have to really go into depth with them, but just to acknowledge to them that there was something going on for you and you've gone away, you've processed it. You might come back and go, look, I felt myself reacting to what you said, and and I've realized some stuff about that. Take it as a learning opportunity. And, if somebody says anything to you, it's your responsibility on how you react to it. Always. And we have to really take sovereignty over that, really take responsibility for our emotions, our reactions, and realize that, like I said before, it's usually an old wound that's coming up, and it will come up really regularly and it's trying to tell you need to deal with this. And when you can go away and process it, and what I ask myself is, hang on a minute, when was the first time I felt like this? And, when I first started doing it, well, like it would be, I'd go back to something quite recent. And, of course, that was not the first time I felt it. But over time, you can go back further and further. And you'll usually come to a place where you can go straight there. And it may have been when you were a baby crying in your cot and nobody came to pick you up. That was my first time. And there's lots of different ways that gets triggered in my life, and it has been triggered by people not listening to me, people not doing what I asked them to do, lack of communication. And so I've overreacted to it often, because actually there was this wound there all the time of not feeling lovable. And so that now, of course, I've done so much work around that I don't get triggered quite the same. I still get triggered from time to time, but definitely the more you work on it, the more you heal those wounds of that little child, which, once again, I'll go back to that because I've kind of gone on a bit of a journey, that there is that little child in all of us. And so I've probably skipped a little bit here. So when you take yourself off and you go back to when was the first time, and you can kind of, in your mind's eye, imagine yourself, that little child, whatever age it was, even if it was a teenager that you come back to, what would you do for that version of yourself, to heal it? And, like I've gone back in meditations and when I was that little baby, and just my version of myself now, and just held that little baby and said, you know what? It's going to be okay. It's actually going to be okay, Sarah, and you really are loved. And by doing that, it's just, man, it is a powerful tool. You can give to you what you didn't get from your parents or whoever your carers were when you were growing up. And that is one of the biggest self-love tools that you can give yourself, is doing that work to fill yourself up, to love yourself, to know that you are a worthy, powerful, beautiful human being with so much to share the world. And, you know, very few people grow up having that told to them. I've never met anybody that's been told that by their parents, even if their parents had thought that. You know, like in days gone by, people did not open up, be vulnerable, did not share how they felt. They didn't show their real love. They didn't have any clue. You know, if well, and in our house, you know, if you've got emotionally unavailable parents, which a lot of us did have, you know, we've got to learn how to be emotionally available. And to learn how to be emotionally available and be vulnerable in your relationships, you've got to learn to do that within yourself first, and to give yourself that love, and to fill yourself up, to practice those self-care practices that I talked about in my last video. If you haven't watched it, you might like to go back and listen to that. But when you're doing all this work, you will suddenly realize very slowly over time that, oh my gosh, I was in that situation, I didn't feel anxious, or I was in that situation, I didn't get triggered. And you start to notice that you're changing. And you start to notice that it's not such a big deal to put yourself out there anymore. I mean, I was the most shy, unconfident child, and I mean, I wore a mask for most of my adult life, that people thought that I was super confident. And in fact, some people thought I was stuck up. I've heard that before. Oh, we thought you were stuck up. So I wasn't stuck up. I was actually really shy, and I found it difficult, especially in new circumstances or in new situations, to open myself up and be friendly and outgoing. I would just stand back, and I kind of swung from being really kind of introverted to being really, really extroverted, and especially if I had alcohol in me. And, you know, those have been some of the coping mechanisms that I've used, and I'm sure many other people have used them as well. So when you really start doing the hard work, because it is hard work, but you can just chip away at it slowly, 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 the payoffs are enormous. And, you know, I would never, ever have believed that I would be on social media and on YouTube making videos. Like, my gosh. But I really feel that there will be people that need this, and I really want to connect with them and help people, like I said before, to make those shifts in their lives. And I feel like we really are at a time when everybody needs to shift the things that have held them back for too long, and people can step into their true purpose for being here. And, you know, when we're not feeling confident in ourselves and we lack self-esteem, it's very difficult to step out there and take a risk and yeah, step into the things that we were born to do. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to connect with you soon. Remember, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. You know how it goes. Everyone says it on YouTube. And I hope you're having a fabulous day, and I hope to share more with you very, very soon. Thank you. Bye.